For our next story of the day, hey, this one, another one that just rippled the rugby world wild, happening last week. It was the announcement from World Rugby that starting in July of this year, so basically right before the Rugby World Cup, we're lowering the tackle box. What? Oh my God, no way! What does that mean? So basically what World Rugby is trying to do is basically avoid all the issues that the NFL has had, all right? They said, oh man, we're starting to get a lot of news about concussions. We're starting to get a lot of people. We got suicides. We're starting to get everything that American football started to have. We need to jump on this fast. And so they made the abrupt decision, which just has to be kind of a quick turnaround, to be honest with you, is that they are now changing the rules globally that the tackle box is going to be moved from at least the middle of the chest, bottom of the chest down to being from the waist down, the stomach down, which is, it's a tough one. That's a tough one, but once again, this is one of those situations where I kind of understand where both sides are coming from. Again, this is news that was not received very well by the rugby community. A lot of people complaining about the difficulty, possibilities of injuries to the face from the knees, yada, 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 yada. But the reality of the situation is it's kind of a rule that feels like it's being more enforced than it is actually being something new. It just kind of reminds me of the progression of how the speeding up the play ruling that World Rugby made, again, not too long ago. And to even speak to the point, clearly we're expecting to see more. Alan Gilpin, who's the CEO for World Rugby, said, in line with our 6-point plan to make rugby the most progressive sport on player welfare, last year World Rugby opened discussions with unions about lowering the tackle height in the community game around the globe. At those meetings, unions were presented with findings from trials that have been taking place in France and South Africa, as well as initial data from rugby-specific studies using smart mouth guards. Going on, he would say, discussions with the union have progressed and formal proposals to be applied around the world are expected to be presented to our executive board in March. We welcome the RFU taking these proactive steps. Rugby will never stand still when it comes to player welfare, and this is a prime example of the sport, once again, putting our words into action. So, as I said, it's trying to get ahead of problems that have already started to exist. It's changing the concept. Like, one of the annoying myths that we always talk about with rugby is that it's safer than American football, which is utterly BS. It's really not. The impacts are about the same. They just get presented differently. But in this, lowering the tackle box from a financial standpoint, I get it. There's not a great rugby players union that exists anywhere. Like, there's not. So anybody who's trying to enforce medical expenses and trying to get people to pay out for post-play injuries, it's almost impossible. And you could say, well, they got free health care and stuff like that. But one, that's dependent on the country. And number two, it's going to be depending on how much of that did they get and how speedy and how well does it come along. Because I've learned time and time again, free healthcare isn't really free healthcare. It's discounted. It's cheaper. It's not as egregious as it might be like in the U.S., but there's still a cost. And especially whenever you want top-end healthcare, it becomes even more costly as things. And when you have bigger injuries, typically need more specialists. And I feel like that's usually where your costs end up going into. So this makes sense from the standpoint of World Rugby trying to get ahead. And again, we've talked about it before. World Rugby is trying to be the ultimate rugby media conglomerate in the world, so they have to do things to make it more advertiser friendly so that they don't feel any backlash because, they suck at making money, so they got to do what they got to do. That being said, the other side of it. As a player, it sucks. I mean, look, we already naturally know that you're supposed to get low. Yes, theoretically, we are supposed to get people by the waist, square up, head on the outside leg, and be able to pull down. Unfortunately, life doesn't go that way, all right? Like, when you have some big guys, and I love, there was a video that was out of a rugby union player, I think it was in Super Rugby, where dude, it just crashes through like 3 people like it's nothing, and they're low, and he's just getting as low as they are, and all his momentum is going at them. So it's, I think Mike Friday actually tweeted on it. He was just like, yeah, probably should go lower, huh? Like, this is one of those things where, yeah, it's funny. It's uncomfortable. It sucks. And I know there's guys who are able to make really big hits right on the chest. Like, attempt to make the wrap, but it's the chest hit. And make their tackles from there. And, you know, it's going to suck for them, especially for bigger guys who need to go down on lower players. My concern of this one is going to be, where are they going to consider the head to be whenever a tackle is made in that box? Because one of the most egregious fouls that I've always found is whenever a defender actually tries to get lower than the attacker, the offensive player, and the offensive player just gets lower than them. And so the defender has no choice but to hit him either high or hit him near the head. And at that point, you're just like, you can't do much. Like, there's momentum, there's your center of gravity, you're trying to maintain position, and you're not trying to hurt the player, you're just trying to make the tackle. And a ref calling that as a yellow card, or even worse, as a red card, when it's not intentional and you try to get low, I think that, one, affects the game. 2, it messes with how defenders want to go in. We see this a little bit in the NFL, where you have a moment of hesitation on exactly how you play on a player with the ball. And while it can make for maybe slightly better offense, it does take away a component of the game. So when you're doing that, I'm hoping that this tackle box rule is loosely enforced, simply on the fact that you need to make sure, one, players have learned how to adjust to it. And when we're talking on a global scale, that's going to be tough. 2, like, also understand that there has to be a little bit of a, a flexible decision on that, because not all leg players are going to go the same. Like, we're not trying to give advantages to any one set of people. So I don't know. When it comes to this, I'm in the middle. I prefer to know, because I know for me, I'm really good at tackling from the bottom of the chest to the top of the legs, because I don't like, I sucked at ankle tackles. Like, I don't wrap up ankles unless you're just trying to drag somebody, and I'm not waiting for my teammates to do it, especially in rugby whenever people are passing off quickly. Like, I go for the top because I love being able to wrap around the arms and at least working to try and prevent the pass from happening so the tackle would actually be meaningful. But knowing that this plays in, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. But I don't trust World Rugby with it, but I'm hoping that, again, the refs that are going to be enforcing this are going to be lenient to the adjustments that are made. And I'm interested to see how many people are able to take advantage of this during the Rugby World Cup this year, because that's going to be like I said, it's a slight adjustment. It's going to be the enforcing, and I want to see how much they decide to enforce the rules on this going into it. So we'll see. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are on it. Let me know what you think.
For a while I lost my smile, but they still couldn't steal my style. Now they're never gonna bring me